Can I play?
If it's on live, please go ahead.
Yeah. Can you confirm? Yes.
Hello, everyone. A big, hearty, warm welcome to one and all of you who are joining us on this lovely Saturday evening. Let me take a few seconds to introduce myself. I'm Nishani Manohar, and I'm the Executive Director of IIT Madras Alumni Association, shortly known as IITMAA. Sangam is our flagship thought leadership yearly event, and this year is the 4th edition of IITMAA Sangam. The organizing committee has put together a program which will be live streamed over the next 4 months, and we hope every one of our viewers engage and thoroughly enjoy Sangam 2021. It has been empowering to be a part of this program this year. The ideology, interaction with eminent individuals, as well as bringing the alumni community together has been the highlight so far. I would like to now invite Mr. Narayan, President of IITMAA, to formally welcome and launch Sangam 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishani. The Honorable Governor of Tamil Nadu, Thiru Ravi, the Director of IIT Madras, Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy, alumni and friends. On behalf of the IIT Madras Alumni Association, I'm delighted to welcome you all to Sangam 2021. Our 50,000 plus alumni and faculty across the world have gone on to achieve extraordinary things in different walks of life: business, technology, public life, arts. At the association, we have been inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhiji. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Keeping that in mind, we have articulated 2 new missions for the next 2 years. Mission 5,000 Ignited Minds, which is to nurture 5,000 committed volunteers in the association's initiatives, and Mission Million Smiles, to positively impact at least 1 million people in our local communities in India. I invite you all to join us in this journey towards Million Smiles. In the last 3 editions of Sangam, we have deliberated ideas on social impact, reimagining India in 2030, and driving the new normal. I'm delighted that Shamala and her team have chosen the topic of restoring balance in STEM as the theme for this year's Sangam. Taking an informed position on science, technology, and innovation, and encouraging more women in STEM are important focus areas for us at IITMAA. The philosopher Rumi says, life is a balance between holding on and letting go. I interpret this balance as holding on to positive things humanity has accomplished, embracing technological developments, and at the same time, letting go of our societal biases and inequity. I'm sure with your active participation in Sangam, we will explore this theme deeply. I wish the Sangam team the very best. Let me now invite Shyamala Rajaram, Secretary IITMAA and Chair of Sangam 2021 to address you.
Vanakkam, Namaste, good evening, good morning, and welcome everyone to Sangam 2021. This year's theme is on restoring balance in STEM, and this edition is going to be conducted in a hybrid mode spread over 4 months. The crucial role of women in STEM in actually accelerating this restoration of balance will be the key focus through this event. The event itself will bring forward conversations around balancing globalization and local businesses, growth and sustainability, convenience and privacy, and thus restoring balance in STEM. These conversations will be very relevant to today's context of acceleration in technological innovation. We have planned for special programs and contests that will create awareness among students and also to launch initiatives around women in STEM, women in leadership and entrepreneurship, and women in research and academia. I would like to welcome all of you to participate and urge you and encourage you to join hands with us so that we can make this program a big success. We are indeed honored today to have the Governor of Tamil Nadu, Thiru and Ravi, to address us and officially launch the event.
Distinguished Director IIT Madras, Dr. Bhaskar Murthy, President, General Secretary and Office Bearers of IIT Madras Alumni Association, all the alumni of IIT Madras, distinguished invitees, gracious ladies and gentlemen, Anaivarkum, Vanakkam, Namaskar to all of you. I extend my heartiest greetings to all of you on this occasion of IIT Madras Alumni Association organized Sangam 2021 on the theme Balancing STEM, the way forward. I am delighted to be among the sharpest mind and the people who are the best and the brightest in the country, indeed the world. It's a matter of pride for me, and I'd like to thank the association for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity to be with you and share some of my thoughts. IIT Alumni Association is actively thinking and discussing the future of India. It is deeply reassuring and heartening. You are, in the next 3 months or so, you will be, as I am told, holding several serious events on the theme. And I'm confident that out of this churning, a number of good ideas, practical ways will come out for the good of the country. You know, there is a technology vision 2035 prepared with due diligence and intense involvement of experts under the chairmanship of an eminent scientist, Dr. Kakotkar. It's a serious document, Technology Vision 2035. And I'm sure this may be one of the important reference points for you to deliberate in pursuit of your theme. As far as the technological aspect of Technology Vision for India or balancing STEM, you are far better equipped. You are far more capable of understanding and taking it forward than me. What I would like to share with you today is something of which this vision, technology vision, is a subset, is an integral constituent. Using the language of set theory, that something is the universal set, Vision India. The Vision India, what kind of vision we have for India, of which technology vision is a constituent, a very, very important constituent. Indeed. Then what is Vision India? I would like to discuss, elaborate a bit on this vision, because this vision is the compass. There may be a number of mid-course corrections, changes, but the vision, our goal must be clear. Where are we heading? How we are heading? What all we need to do? We have a plan, we try to create a roadmap, but that will be subject to mid-course correction depending on the exigencies of the time, the situation. But the vision has to be very clear. And what is that Vision India? Vision India is holistic rejuvenation of India. Holistic rejuvenation of India. What does it mean? Our Prime Minister, time and again, reiterates the vision in very pithy expressions. He says, Ek Bharat, One India, Swasth Bharat, Healthy India, Samriddh Bharat, Prosperous India, Samarth Bharat, Capable India, and Shresth Bharat, India the leader. And towards this end, he has been rolling out programs, schemes from time to time. Within months of his assuming charge, if you recall, on 2nd October 2014, he picked up broom. He launched Swachh India. We were known for lack of it, public places, private places. Cleanliness was not something which was, as a culture, deeply instilled in our people. Building toilets. India in 2014 had the dubious distinction of nearly 60% of the country going for open defecation. Now, where are we today? Within a few years, now India is nearly open defecation free. When he started, some people started thinking and making joke of it. What is this? A prime minister talking about cleanliness, talking about toilets. But that was needed. It was needed not only for a better image of the country, but the better health of our people. It was needed to make our women an equal partner in the project New India, to meet the vision of India. So in schools, building toilets for girls separately. In houses, also building toilets. Because not having toilet in house, in personal houses, it adversely affected the health of the woman more than men. Now, simple measures, but these were very, very potent. Then, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. We had cases of millions of missing girls. There were cases of female feticide. Our gender ratio was adverse. With respect to female, we had far more many men than women. And a recent survey done by the Family Health Survey, it has revealed that for the first time in the history, now the gender seems to be turning in favor of the women. There are more women than the men. Of course, the exact figure will come out once we have the census 2021, but this is what a very reliable family health survey has revealed. So these schemes launched in the form of mass campaign, it has yielded remarkable dividend. Then Digital India, connecting people. Jan Dhan Yojana, the poorest man having access to bank account, access to bank through Aadhaar, linked with the mobile. It's a very efficient tool for financial inclusion. Now, at the time when it started, people were skeptical, but within a few years, more than 400 million accounts were created, opened. People living in the remote villages, they were linked with bank account. They had bank accounts. Mudra Yojana for our entrepreneurs, easy capital, basically to improve the overall ecosystem for the people to come forward and be active partner in building this new India. Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, potable water in every house, bringing electricity to every house, all these missions are almost nearing completion. Now these are revolutionary transformations which are happening for rejuvenation of India. When Prime Minister says, Ek Bharat, one India, what we need to understand is he's not talking about geographical integrity of India. No Indian has any doubt that India's geographical integrity, territorial integrity is inviolable. And least of all the present Prime Minister. He has demonstrated it time and again. Anyone who had tried to be adventurous has got a befitting reply. So it is not, one India is not just merely territorial integrity of India. India is rich in diversity. We have cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, diversity in cuisine, in diversity in customs, dresses, geography, numerous diversities. Now these diversities should ideally be our strength, and that is our strength. But what has happened over the period, the diversities have emerged as our vulnerabilities. That's not the right thing. This diversity, instead of being a cause for celebration, it is becoming a cause of concern. It happened in centuries-long subjugation and colonization of this country. What is India? What is the idea of India? Long before, thousands of years before the Common Era, the rishis of this country, they realized the truth of unity of creation. Not only humans, but every element of creation, at some point they are organically linked. And the diversity that we see, which are apparent, these diversities are superficial. These are like leaves of a tree, let us say. A tree has millions of leaves, and no two leaves are exactly identical. We know that nature does not replicate exactly. They may be similar, but they are not identical. But all the leaves are organically connected with the tree with the earth that holds the entire creation. And that's how our rishis in our prayers, and which we still do, we still pray in a similar way. We don't pray only for ourselves. We don't pray only for just people of our country and our family, our country, or human beings, but we pray for the entire creation. When we say, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, let every being be happy, joyful. Let every being be free of diseases. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kasyit dukha bhag bhavet. Let each see goodness in other, and let there be no suffering to any living being. This realization of oneness of creation was associated with another realization, that this realization of oneness is experienced and expressed variously by various people with the space and time. And then they said, Eka sada vipra baudha badanti. Truth is one. It is expressed variously. And that is why all these different religion, different paths, different customs, they are multiple myriad ways of expressing, but at some level they are all united. It's a very inclusive concept. It brings people together, and from this emanated our eternal belief and philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family. Now in India, what happened during this period, long period of subjugation and colonization, that these diversities were contrived and projected as fundamental differences between the people. And people were instigated again, one against the other. Divide and rule. Literatures were created. A lot of intellectual input went into it to create that kind of literature, where diversity was projected as fundamental differences and society was divided. When in ancient India they realized, and when this light spread over the land, it spread over the land from the ocean to the Himalayas. And that's when the Rishi said, defined Bharat, Uttaram yat samudrasya, Himadrishya dakshinam, Varsham tad Bharatam nama, Bharati yatra santati. Land north of the ocean and south of the ice-capped Himalayas, ice-peaked Himalayas, is a land. It is called Bharat. Bharat means a land enwrapped, embraced by light. This light of unity in diversity. But this was distorted over centuries, and result is that we look at diversity with concern, not as a matter of joy. It must change. As Indians, we might have different cultures, different languages, different cuisines, dress, geography, but we are one. It is a one family. That is Ek Bharat. Swasth Bharat, healthy India. Samriddha Bharat, prosperous India. Now, make in India. Create opportunities for people to be entrepreneurs. Unleash the strength and the potential of the people, our youth, aspirational youth. Now, these are all for the holistic rejuvenation of India. And when Prime Minister talks about it, we need to appreciate that it's not only talks, but all the policies, all the developments that have been happening for the last about 7 years. How is it different from things in the past? And quite significant progress has happened in the past, ever since the British left. We have built infrastructures, we have created institutions, we have made progress, significant progress. But the difference that we have now is, now we are moving with a vision, unlike what we had in the past 5-year plan. The governments used to be elected, being a democratic country. People mandate is essential. Periodic validation of people's wish or trust in a particular set of people is a key to our democracy. So a government comes for 5 years. When they come, they prepare a plan for 5 years, what all they will do. They will build infrastructure, they will launch this scheme, that scheme. So it was a 5-year plan, not with a holistic vision. Today, the Prime Minister, when he talks, the shortest that he talks about is 2047. That's 100 years of India's independence. In between, you have milestones. This to reach what we like to be in 2047, this is where we'll be in 2025, 2030, 35, 40 and on. But the goal, the vision is that, it's not 5-year plan. So we have a fundamental difference that today, India is moving to realize a vision of India, not segmented short 5-year plan. Another difference that we see today, you can all see it, that we have whole of India approach to realizing that vision. It's not a government driven. Government may be catalyst, but no. The vision does not lie in the sterile notings of the government files. Vision is in the aspirations of the people. And that is why all these schemes are launched as a mass campaign, as a mass movement. It is not that the government is the owner of it or government is one which drives it. Government stimulates, Prime Minister stimulates, but it is a mass campaign. We involve. That is what when the Prime Minister says, "Sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka vishwas." It's 1.4 billion Indians. They have to be partner. They have to be active participant in this realizing this vision India. So the difference is, it's not bureaucratic. It's not just government driven. It is whole of India approach. To realize this vision, the plans that are formulated, unlike in the past, it's not done through a bureaucratic exercise. It's involvement of the experts outside the government, largely. Look at this technology 2035, the vision, technology vision 2035. There is a lot of experts participation, reputed people from outside. Our National Education Policy 2020, it's not a product of a bureaucratic exercise. It's involvement of lakhs and lakhs of people and thousands of experts from all over the country, well-known experts in their own domain, and the people who are operating, working in the society. It's through their involvement that this document has been produced. So the difference is that we are moving towards the vision, harnessing the strength of the country, the strength of the respective segments in the country, not relying only on the government. These are fundamental differences. An attempt is being made to create a sense of confidence among the people, our youth. The confidence, the courage to experiment and fail and experiment again. That's how we can realize that vision, India. For all these to happen, for making a vision India a reality, as it is possible only with the partnership of the whole of India, there has to be a nationalistic pride, a pride in being an Indian, pride in our past, which has been lacerated during the period of subjugation and colonization. We have been made to believe during this period that all that was Indian was something to be ashamed of. There was nothing to be proud of in the India's past. Systematically, literatures were created, and all the evidence of greatness of the past were erased. Attempts were made to erase, not that they have fully succeeded it. In India, in ancient India, it was not only that we had reached, our ancient rishis had attained the apex of philosophical and spiritual realization, but in the domain of science and technology also, we were fairly ahead of the rest of the world. In fact, much ahead of the Europe and US. They were nowhere in picture. Now, I'll tell you a few things, because many of us have not been told about it. It's not your fault. It's not the fault of our people, because these things we have not brought it in our curriculum. Now, you know, for nearly 2,000 years, our national calendar, Panchang as it is called, it can predict with precision lunar eclipse, solar eclipse. Now, you are all from the science background. What is needed to predict with precision these eclipses? The knowledge of planetary motion. Moon coming within Earth and Sun, causing solar eclipse, and Earth coming within, between the Moon and Sun, lunar eclipse. Planetary motion, the knowledge of planetary motion. But we all know, we all have been taught that we got to know it, the world got to know it only after Newton. It is not to undermine the important significance of Isaac Newton. He was a great scientist. The world is proud of him. But the fact is that for 2,000 years, Indians knew in advance with precision these eclipses. Means they knew the laws of planetary motion. In industries, textile, we were the best. But systematically these were closed to ensure, and killed to ensure India becoming a market. In iron production, you read a report of Assistant Surveyor General of Madras, Captain A.J. Campbell, 1842. He has prepared a detailed report because UK wanted to export iron to India, and they were finding it difficult because they were not buyers, Indian buyers for British iron. The report says that the reason why Indians are not buying, in the whole year of 1842, Britain could export only 1,000 metric ton of iron at Madras port. Means for entire Madras presidency. The reason, he says, is that making iron was almost like a cottage industry in India. People were making at several locations. It was easy, they had not to bear the transportation cost, and in quality it was better than the iron which was being brought from England. Subsequently, these industries were killed. In shipbuilding, it's well known, we're way ahead. Read the report of 1767 of Fellow of Royal Society, England, on inoculation against smallpox in India, right from Bengal to Madras. People had that. In the Maratha Company War, when the Marathas, both sides soldiers had lost some certain organs, and British were surprised to see that in Maratha army, many of the soldiers who had lost their arms, they had organ transplant. And then the team came, they studied. These are all matter of record. But systematically we are made to believe that there was nothing in India, it was a dark phases. And we were humiliated. So what we need, we restore the sense of pride to our people. In 1750, 73% of the world trade was India and China, with India's share a little larger than China's share. 73% of the global trade, industrial trade, was India and China. There was no Europe, there was no US. So, a sense of nationalistic pride in our past, in our heroes who are unsung. In Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of independence, what we are doing all over the country is, we are looking for the unsung heroes, because freedom of India came not by the work and sacrifices of a few people, but a large number of countless Indians have suffered from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, from Kutch to Kohima. They need to be discovered. They are being forgotten. We must honor them. We must be proud of them. If you have seen, for the last several years, ever since Prime Minister Modi came, our Padma Award, there was a time earlier when people in the influential circle, mostly those who had connections in Delhi, they would be getting Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan. Now people are pleasantly surprised, and some wonder, that you find a woman, a lady, who has planted thousands of plants, a tribal lady, barefoot, has so much knowledge of the trees. She is honored, decorated with this Padma. Country is built by such people who are unknown, unsung, and yet they are doing so much good for the country. We need to recognize them. We need to honor them. It's instilling a sense of pride, collective pride, and taking the people all along in our mission to realize the vision of India. Friends, when I share with you this vision of India, this is with a sole purpose that you, the finest and the brightest mind in the field of technology, and with your commitment, wherever you are, whichever country you are serving, whichever company you are serving, you have love for India, and we are all proud of you. When you are deliberating in the next 3 months, your theme, which is very important, balancing a stem. While deliberating that, keep that vision of India in mind. We have to make India one India, healthy India, prosperous India, capable India, and India the leader. Friends, the whole country is proud of our IITians. You have made us proud at every moment, and I'm confident that you will continue making us proud in future too. Wherever you are, spare some moments for the country. Individually or collectively, whatever you do, please do. Because you are our most precious and priceless resource or asset. With this, I would like to wish the Sangam 2021 all the very best, and all the very best to you all in your life and career. Nandri, Vanakkam, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable Governor, for your kind address. Thank you for highlighting the importance of having a focused vision and also instilling in us a pride in our country and pride in our past. We definitely wish that through this program and activities beyond, we can accelerate the journey of rejuvenating India and restoring a sense of pride in our country and making India a leader. Thank you very much for your kind address once again. And hi, everybody. Welcome again to Sangam 2021. I would now hand over the baton to Malati Raghunath, alumni of IIT Madras from the batch of 1999, to proceed with today's conversation on the strategy for Indian Pharma to propel the global market. Over to you, Malati.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Malati Raghunath. I am an alumna from the batch of 99 IIT Madras, the chemistry department. It's my pleasure to welcome you all and introduce the Sangam Pharma panel today. On the panel as speakers, we have Mr. V. Varun, who leads the Novartis Data Science as its director. He has about 15 years of experience. He's been very instrumental in delivering large-scale artificial intelligence platform at Novartis. Welcome, Varun. Next up, we have Mr. Mehta. Sam, as he goes by, heads the Dr. Mehta Group of Hospitals, and he's also an inventor and entrepreneur, and he calls himself a human behavior anthropologist. Welcome, Sam Mehta. Next up, Dr. Radha Rangarajan. She heads the HealthCube as a Chief Technology Officer. It's a medical device company that does product development, clinical validation, and also point-of-care diagnostics. Welcome, Dr. Radha Rangarajan. And we are delighted to have an esteemed alumni panel, which is going to serve as moderators for this panel. Welcome to Dr. Srividya Ramakrishnan, who heads the process engineering at Dr. Reddy's labs in Hyderabad. She is a vice president who serves additionally as the role of chief diversity officer at Dr. Reddy's. Welcome, Dr. Srividya. And welcome, Dr. Bhuvaneswari Sridhar, a fellow chemist, an organic chemist by training with over 25 years of experience. She heads the API Development Center at Pfizer, Chennai, as its vice president. Welcome, Dr. Bhuvaneswari Sridhar. Bhuvana and Srividya are our esteemed alumni. They do us proud because they were featured as the women in STEM and the young under 51 women talent of STEM in India. Welcome all of you, and the panel is now open and the pharma is now live. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Malati, for such a kind introduction and great start with Honorable Governor's speech. I would like to welcome everyone who are connected today, and I'm sure that there is a very important and interesting conversation awaits us all. That is restoring balance in STEM. And this is multiple connotations coming from environment, the economy, and the society. And what we are going to focus today is the ability of pharma sector to impact each of this. That is going to be our primary focus. And with COVID dominating all our lives in the last 2 years, I think we have risen up to all the challenges and have shown, right, all of us can be successful by the support across the pharma sector, not only from medicines as well as from vaccines and also the connected industry, right? Like let it be a manufacturing of syringes. There has been such a connected work along the entire value chain to make us all proud that we have come out of this pandemic. At least we can say now that we are 75% crossed, yet another 25% we just shall await, and I'm sure that all of us are very positive about it. And the Indian pharma industry has grown about 10 times in the last 2 decades, from about 4.2 billion to about 42 billion. And also we see that the future for the Indian pharma industry is just now, by way of accelerating research and innovation, achieving equitable and sustainable healthcare. I think we talked about it, and also our governor touched upon what it is called as equity and inclusiveness. Strengthening manufacture and supply across the value chain. That is one thing. Like we may have high innovation rate, but if we are not able to manufacture it, it's going to be a biggest issue. And improving access to all, right? These are the 4 elements that we thought we have to just have primarily discuss on. We have the section of panelists from multiple areas as we just got introduced, and we will be touching on topics of primarily technology, leadership, talent, and society with all the 3 of the panelists around. Srividya, on to you to start the technology session.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavana, and welcome again to all the panelists. Really a privilege to have you all with us today. So talking about research and innovation and accelerating this in India, right? Technology has been the key enabler, and this is what our Honorable Governor just now emphasized. And if you just think of 2021, I mean, 2 years back, who had heard of mRNA? Very few people in the world, right? Messenger RNA, number of people going through, experimental injections for mRNA therapies was barely a few thousand. In 2021, Pfizer and Moderna rolled out billions of mRNA vaccines. There's literally been a breakout year for mRNA, and this is the impact that technology can have. And as you think about COVID, Remdesivir is a household name, right? But the problem with Remdesivir is intravenous. But today we have new oral antivirals also coming up to tackle the pandemic. And this is how fast innovation is happening in the industry. At Dr. Reddy's, we are focusing on innovation in complex generics, characterization, and intellectual property. Through work on process modeling and simulation to create digital twins, an area I'm sure Varun has a lot of expertise on, with data science, and also many others like advanced manufacturing technologies, advanced analytical technologies, sensorization, and so on. So with that, I would like to actually start off the discussion with what do you think are some of these emerging technologies in the pharma sector, and maybe Varun, if you can lead this discussion on this.
No, thanks a lot for that, Srividya, and very happy to be on this panel. Hello all. So since you spoke about data science as well as one of the focus areas, right? So let me start to respond using the data science lens and the angle, right? So like many industries, data science has also taken the pharma industry by storm, right? Now, you spoke about mRNA, you spoke about drug formulation as well, right? So think of drug formulation itself is like an art, right? It's like cooking. Typically, all the formulation scientists, what they do is they decide on what amount of ingredient A and what amount of ingredient B needs to go in, right? And each time they decide such a combination, they need to start to physically create this drug, this product, and validate it. This process would typically take a couple of months to do this iteratively and finally develop a model, right? And like our Honorable Governor also mentioned about the failure rates, right? And if you're looking at the first-in-class kind of drugs, the failure rate is really, really high, right? Now, if you imagine that you had data of all the experiments that one has done in the past, if you had data on the molecular structure itself or the chemistry of the different structures, now if you augment all of this data and put it with the computational power that we have today, we can go ahead and match what kind of chemical compound or what kind of molecule will actually go and adhere to the protein structures, right? Now, AI today has now enabled us to learn a large space of this representation and narrow down on this particular class of molecules that are go and bind with our protein molecules, right? Now, what data science and AI has essentially done to the pharma world today is try to bring in more and more efficiencies to this kind of process at warp speed, right? Now, if you look at the entire life cycle, right from the biomedical research space, any kind of protein interactions, trying to make key decision on what kind of portfolios of molecules one might want to prioritize, understand the entire risk profile once the molecule has been decided, planning on all the different clinical stages, and once that is done, push it into production, optimizing our supply chain, the procurement, launch. Once it's launched, go and even talk to the patients, ensure that the drugs reach the patients. All of this entire value chain, data science is now embedded in it, right? Now, data science is in part and parcel of a lot of the decisions that are being made across a lot of pharma companies. So that's where I would say data science is kind of supporting the entire pharma and healthcare as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Varun. And I think expanding beyond data science, I would request our, Radha or Sam to also comment on, how do we, as a country, how do we now expand beyond generics? Generics has really driven our growth in the last 2 decades. But how do we now accelerate R&D in biosimilars, new chemical entities, and so
on? Perhaps I can take a shot at that question. My experience in R&D spans more than 2 decades. I actually have been in R&D for drugs, diagnostics, and now devices. And in a previous life, I had my own company where we were developing next generation novel antibiotics to treat highly resistant infections. And prior to that, I was at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, actually in the Discovery Research Division, where we were developing drugs for diabetes, heart disease, as well as I also was keenly involved in the infectious diseases portfolio. So in my own lifetime, I have seen technologies change with respect to drug discovery, and they are changing in favor of India being able to be more deeply involved in NC research or new chemical entity research, which is really what I'll focus on. We've done great as a generics manufacturer, as a country that is good at manufacturing generics. The future really lies in being able to meet more and more unmet needs. For example, no one's going to develop a drug for chikungunya or leptospirosis. We'll have to do that for India because it matters, because morbidity is high from these diseases. So we will have to build that capacity. And it's not that we've not done it in other sectors. So surely we can do it in pharma. So we'll have to find ways to solve this problem differently. So when you look at the statistics for developing new drugs, the numbers can be staggering: 10 to 15 years, $1.8 billion. This is all, impossible for a country like India to really embrace. So we'll have to work cleverly. We'll have to work differently. And although these numbers are big pharma numbers, and small biotechs, startups work very differently. They can be very nimble. But the most expensive part of R&D is clinical development. And there are no shortcuts there, because clinical development is the only way we know, which is staged, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that we can take a drug safely to market, understanding its full potential. Now, when you look at the cost of clinical development, there are many reasons why it is expensive. And one is, patient recruitment, the length of these sorts of trials, the safety issues that have to be kept in mind, the kinds of outcomes that one is looking at. For example, if you want to develop a new diabetes drug now, you not only have to show effects on glycemic control, but you also have to show effects on outcomes, which can take a very long time. So, and when you roll back to the preclinical phase, some of the most difficult parts to predict are toxicity, pharmacokinetics, and then when you go back even further, it is actually selection of compounds and screening and so on and so forth. But with all of this, I think, like Varun says, data science, AI, ML, this is really there are a number of different ways in which these advanced technologies can help. In fact, during COVID, we've had one example. I don't know how many of you know about this, but there's a drug called baricitinib, which was predicted to be a therapy for COVID-19 by a company called Benevolent, which ran huge AI/ML-based platform to identify or to repurpose existing approved drugs. And this emerged from that search. And at a time when there was nothing at all, at least we had something that came out of a prediction. So there are two things I want to focus on. One is that all of these advanced modeling and predictions that use AI/ML have the potential to reduce the cost of development. And the second is that all of these technologies also have the potential to reduce the time it takes to take a drug to market. Now, COVID-19 was a case in point. Even though Dr. Bhuvaneswari said that as an industry, we responded very rapidly. And I agree that COVID-19 was exceptional in the speed with which we were able to bring a vaccine to market. But look at how drugs went. We are now getting our first small molecules into the market just now, almost 24 months since the beginning of this epidemic. So how can we reduce the time to take a drug? How can we respond? Because the future is going to be about new infectious diseases that come our way. How can we respond faster to the emerging threats? And that's where I see great potential for AI/ML. And that lies not just in, and at the crux of all of that is going to be, of course, the ability to leverage data. And in India, we do have, we are sitting on very, very large volumes of data, but the law has to enable the usage of this data in a way that is both meaningful and at the same time protective of patients' rights and patients' access and ability to control how that data gets used. So I would say that we are well positioned in India because we've got these advanced technologies that can be leveraged. We have a lot of data. We've got to somehow make all of these things come together nicely.
Thank you so much, Radha. And Varun, putting it together, I think, we are now sitting on so many exciting new therapies also coming across, right? We're talking about, this CRISPR gene editing and base editing. We are talking about stem cells, and even recently there have been, looking at clinical trials on psychedelic drugs for mental illness and so on. And with so many exciting things happening in a very cross-disciplinary space, I think it will take us to the next session where we want to really talk about how can India get into leadership in this entire pharma space. And with that, I would hand it over to Bhuvana.
Yeah. Thanks, Srividya. So moving to the topic of leadership, as just now we related in our conversation, what was possible last 2 years is primarily because of the development ecosystem that we have brought into work. And I think a lot of groundwork has been done in the last 2 decades to get this 2 years success story. And I would request Sam to give us some element of starting from this particular success story. What is awaiting us? What is the kind of opportunity and what we should be looking for to lead the entire globe on such kind of pharmaceutical sector, as well as both in terms of medication and medicine availability? Over to Sam.
No, thanks a lot, Bhuvana and the rest. I think, look, let's give a very practical answer. India has got a phenomenal set of talent potential, not only from an engineering side, but also from a customer base side, right? We have one of the highest, largest customer bases that is quite, I think, relatively interestingly structured for a lot of great data acquisition and data conversion into utility. And let me take this 2 steps. When you talk at customers' levels, a customer comes to a healthcare institution and basically wants to get cured. Whether it's a magic pill or whether it's just a bit of care without pills, I think that's what most customers want to do. In fact, if it's pill-less, it's probably even better for a customer because it's, in fact, most of the time cheaper. Now, the problem is most of us are trained, especially if anyone's being trained to be a doctor or trained to be a patient, you're trained to take a pill, right? A pill solves, whether it's a headache, take an aspirin or take the paracetamol. I think that's the reality of most of times today. So I think part of it is, and those of you in the pharma industry know more about the fact that most of the efficacy of these are highly varied, and they're not they are standardized in a capsule form, they're standardized in liquid form, but they are not personalized to a customer. So as you're seeing the rise of home health, for example, in India, which is a very novel industry to a large extent, and that comes with its own set of challenges. The reality is India will be we're a strong leader in tertiary care. I think if you look at the number of outpatient consults we do per day, we're in the top 1 or 2 by a long way. It's not that we're competing against North America. In fact, North America's month is our day, right? Europe's month is our day. So if you look at the scale at which India has reacted to whether it's a pandemic, whether it's our daily life with technology, it's remarkable. Now, with that resource base of talent, whether it's at an engineering level, whether it's at a clinical level, whether it's at a nursing level, because we have amongst the largest nurse populations in the world, or it's at a customer level, the amount of data we're generating, a lot of that is wasted. And if we can figure out how to connect more dots by giving that data to people who can actually solve real problems, then we will start getting more personalized solutions in terms of drugs. That's one part. The second is more efficacious drugs, so more efficient supply chains being built. Because contrary to what most people know, a lot of the raw materials for generics doesn't necessarily start from India, right? And the third, for me, big wave that India represents in terms of leadership is we're already the leader in Ayurveda, right? There's nobody else, maybe Chinese medicine, that comes close. Why don't we take that 5 steps further? And this might sound odd coming from somebody who bets and has one of the oldest institutions in allopathic medicine. But the reality is there are certain diseases, especially in chronic care, that you really do need to leverage all the resources and nature's best that you can harness. And I think India has a great opportunity to take a leadership role there, perhaps very fast, just by connecting the dots with data. And most of it is ML. I don't even think we're talking about advanced AI. There's no reinforcement learning to a large extent in this. Maybe there's a degree of labeling and supervised and unsupervised learning, but that's all ML. To me, I think machine learning, which nearly every IIT student today, whether you come from chemical engineering to management studies to electric eng, you're learning it whether you like it or not, because all your colleagues are learning it to get an edge.
Yeah. Thanks for that perspective. I think you touched upon multiple points. One is the partnership that you talked about, right? Like between the data generation versus where it can be used and how it can be leveraged across multiple streams, right? Like not only to one individual or one function, then that data can put to use in a much better way. So how do we engage in partnerships across industries and government institutes, and also academias? So I would just invite Varun to talk a little bit on whether our partnerships lies today. Is there a way that we can strengthen our partnerships that can make us as leader? What are your views on that?
No, definitely, right? So when you actually look at certain NASCOM reports, right, and in the healthcare space specifically, the data and AI space in healthcare is expected to add on $25 to $30 billion in 2025, right? And that's a very big addition to our GDP. Now, and the key areas that the report actually focuses is on partnership between the corporate academia institutions like the IIT Madras and the rest, the NGOs, right? All of this have to come together to kind of focus on operations, R&D, and patient care, right? And that's what the report talks about, right? And absolutely a very valid point. There are ways through which data science and AI can make quantum leaps in bringing absolutely new possibilities to our patients, right? Trying to put patient first and then trying to develop everything. Now, a close collaboration with the government, with the academia and others is very, very critical to ensure that we're able to deliver. And what better example than the COVID vaccination that we were able to do, right? So 1/6 of the entire world's vaccination is actually done for the India's population. And no better example that can actually say that how all of us are actually coming together to deliver medicine, to even bring access to our patients, to our population. That's where I would leave it.
Radha, any insights that you would like to share that can, because from an entrepreneurial area, is there a support system that is available today? Because we are moving from a kind of a working population to an entrepreneurial population, and do you see that is going to support India to be a leader?
No, I will agree with my fellow panelists that the need of the hour is to really be able to harness the data. It's simpler said than done. The reality is that in India, we work in a very low trust environment. When you start as an entrepreneur, I attempted to collaborate with many government hospitals because we were developing new drugs to treat infections, and the hope was that we could test our compounds on the highly resistant bugs, which are mostly in the tertiary care hospitals. But there was a huge resistance to sharing or to collaborating with private parties, especially small companies. Or there was an expectation that a startup like us would be able to compensate in some significant commercial way. And while entrepreneurs and startups can do things very fast, and I think that they are really the seat of a lot of innovation, they face these barriers day in and day out. Here in Hyderabad, I'm very actively involved with the MedTech incubator of IIIT. And a majority of the startups there are using AI/ML in some form or the other to create products that will either improve the efficiency of delivery of healthcare or will seed the way for new modalities of treatment. And the biggest barrier is the ability to access data. So each entrepreneur, each startup creates their own way, their own mechanism. They know a doctor, they know a private hospital who's willing to engage or collaborate with them. Each startup is solving the problem one at a time, and this is no way to scale. So my hope is that at some point, with NDHM becoming a major focus of the government, where the government is creating mechanisms by which patient data will be secured or be able to be shared between parties, that the end users, the end recipients of healthcare, that is you and me and everybody else, will have the ability to say, yes, you may use my data for R&D. I think ultimately, if India can make that leap, it'll be phenomenal. And it will actually cut short all of this bureaucratic red tape that you encounter when you start to talk to hospitals. Because at the end of the day, it's my data, I should be asked, and if I give permission, then why not? And if we can create and generate awareness and excitement for R&D in the public to say that if you share your data in a safe and secure manner, not only you, but others in the community and future generations will benefit. I think we could perhaps bridge this gap. That's my hope.
So the private
Can I push back a little bit? Look, I think there are lots of organizations out there that enable partnerships. And in fact, IIT Madras does it, right? Through their research park. You don't have to spend more than 5 minutes sitting and walking across the research park to see a number of partnerships, whether it's through HTIC for the health tech incubator. We've done partnerships with 12, 13 companies in our hospital, Dr. Mehta's. In fact, we discovered our first healthcare investment through that with a company called Health Sensei. which came. So I think, look, there are models that successfully work. I think there's the Association of Healthcare Providers of India. There's also the Consortium of Accredited Hospital Organizations of India. And I think they have huge numbers of hospitals, both public, private, trust, mission, and teaching, as well as the care homes, where you have the capacity, if you're a startup, to go and do a tie-up to get access to what I would say, so you're not going to get live patients, but you are going to get, especially if you're in digital health, especially if you're in something like sensor-oriented healthcare, I think there are opportunities to do great partnerships. So I think those pockets exist. I'll use a simpler analogy. When we were in class, we used to say there's a sexy course, let's all sign up for it. But all the smarter people in class figured out that you never look for the sexy course title, you look for the great professor, right? When you found a great professor, you learned much more. And I think that's the same experience I have with partnerships. There are partnerships out there. We tend to all chase, when we have startups, the sexy tie-up, the big brands, the corporate hospital, the government in its entirety. But if you actually think about it, those guys have much more to lose when they get it wrong. What you've got to do is go find the guys which have outstanding champions that sit in those institutions that will help you succeed. And I think that's what folks in IIT Madras, and specifically the research park, Ashok and Mohan and the entire team have managed to do exceptionally successful. Now, the problem is that's the tip of the iceberg, because for every one success there is at an IIT Madras, there are probably 100 guys who are still trying, right? Or 1,000 guys that's still trying. So I think for me, partnership is the way to succeed. I think one thing that I fully agree with Radha is India is quite a low trust environment, right? In America, the joke is always that people say, hey, come to my house. And they actually expect you to come to their house, not really, right? Whereas in India, when somebody says, come to my house, they actually want you to come to their house. It's in sincerity that we say it, right? And I think we tend to get hit back every now and then with the school of hard knocks. But trust is something that's very simple. You build it in small doses and then you escalate, just like you try with pharmaceutical trials, to a large point. You don't start off with the heaviest dose and come down. You go up. And I think if you can figure out good partners to trust in small doses with low-hanging fruit, maybe with data, it's help us clean up our data. See, I'm a hospital provider, right? I'm an 89-year-old health system. My grandparents created Dr. Mehta's. We have huge pedigree, but the focus we have is how do we make sure our clinical outcomes are top world class? And for us to succeed in that, we need partners, because we definitely need better technology, because the costs in healthcare are going up. The complexity in healthcare is going up, and no disease wants to wait for us to solve. And if I can do that with fewer molecules that is actually able to reach more customers, is that not what the best of IIT in India represents?
Thanks, Sam, for that touch. And I think ultimately it spans through. Data is available, how far it is available to the right people at the right time to make right decisions, and path forward is something that we need to look for. And definitely there's a lot of opportunity there, and we will look forward to it. Another thing you also touched at the beginning, the manufacturing sector, getting their ingredients and supply chain. And that is another area I think we have a lot of work to do, because sometimes the dependency on some of the suppliers, primarily from other countries, and primarily today, most of the raw material supplies for any of the industry, globally we are dependent on China. And I think because that doesn't get to a kind of a glamorous attraction today, because that requires going back and finding some base. So I think that is another area, because whatever we do forward, the downstream part of it, the upstream has to be strengthened. And thanks for bringing those perspectives. Handing over to Radha for the next topic. Srividya, yeah, sorry. You are on mute.
Yeah. So, for us to do anything, I think we need talent, right? And we have immense talent in this country. But what I've seen over the years, and I think it's still true, is we have many of our young talent choosing to opt for MBAs or pursue STEM careers outside India. So the question to this panel is, what should industries really do to attract bright talent and engage them in STEM careers in India? Because that's going to really, be the heart of our, to drive us to leadership.
If I may go, right, panelists. So what I have heard, right, that there is a general misconception that if any student wants to enter pharma or the healthcare space, must have a biology background or must have studied biology in their curriculum, right? And I want to kind of state that I want to record during this this entire thing is that all of us on this panel, most of us, right, who work for pharma companies, I think the calling is very clear, right? The calling is that how can I today save or extend and make people's lives better for the good, right? I think that is a calling, that is a common denominator that all of us in the sector have, right? Now, with pharma companies on the journey of data and AI, like our panelists have been saying, most of the companies within the healthcare sector itself is actually on that path today, right? And with data science and AI trying to be one of those threads that's a common element, right? It tries to help us solve multiple problems, and this industry today is learning from other industries, right? And the pharma sector today begs for innovation in the data science and AI space, right? So think of all the multi-objective optimization that can be done in the manufacturing sector, right? Can I procure the right product at the right price at the right time from the right vendor, right? That is a multi-objective optimization problem that one can solve. Think of all the finance algorithms that are used in identifying fraudulent transactions, right? How can I take those algorithms from finance, map it back to the healthcare space and identify any kind of fraudulent claims? There is computer vision that helps us detect cancerous cells, right? So there are a lot of startups coming up with diagnostics that kind of help us detect cancerous cells, right? And then you also have a lot of e-commerce algorithms that we use from a personalization standpoint. Dr. Mehta was talking about how can you make the medicines personalized? Can I get into the precision medicine space? And that is something that we're already borrowing from the e-commerce space. So this industry is or the data science as a field is actually domain agnostic. As and when can we kind of do a lot of learning from other industries, relearn ourselves, unlearn what we have done, try and map out all the solutions, all the products onto the pharma space, right? I think this is the area where it begs for innovation. It begs for innovation in data science and AI, and a lot can be achieved through this. I hope I've inspired a few of them.
So Varun, I totally agree, but I also want to add that while data science and AI is actually quite glamorous today,
True.
right? But I want to add that there are many disciplines which don't have a glamour associated with them, but they're absolutely essential. Like Bhuvana is a chemist. I'm a chemical engineer, right? And we really, molecular biology, so many other areas that, we still need all those disciplines. We want people to embrace those sciences and engineering fields as well. And, just taking it a little further, I would also say that, as a chemical engineer, I find as a woman too, a woman chemical engineer, let me put it, I'm very much in a minority, right, in Dr. Reddy's and probably in India. And, I really want to ask Radha this question that, how do we inspire more women to pursue hardcore STEM careers, right? And what can industry do to support women in this?
Thank you, Srividya. I want to first address the question that was asked about how do you get people to really engage in STEM careers. I mean, the frequently held belief is that, I finish my education and my training, and then I go for a job where I can make a lot of money, right? So one way to look at this is say that, why are technical jobs or why are jobs that require a special kind of technical expertise lower paid than jobs that are in the business or commercial side of industry? I mean, in the companies that we work in the companies that we have seen, you have seen this disparity, right? And that is, to me, that is the first That's the first thing that has to be tackled. Why is it that technical expertise is given a lower priority? But I also want to go one step back and say that it's the way that people are trained. The reason to be in STEM is because there's something that really grabs you, right? You're solving a problem. You're creating new knowledge. You are doing something for which there is a need for a solution, right? That is what drew us to the sciences in the first place, because it's this Socratic method. You ask a question, you do some research, you find an answer, then you test it, and then lo and behold, you have something. How many of us can look back on our careers and say that, hey, I played a role in a product that has gone to market, right? And it's that magic which needs to be created and passed on. So I'll give you some examples of things that we did in my startup. We encouraged high school students to come and run experiments in our labs. We ran internship programs so that students who had a question could come talk to us. We helped them refine their questions, and then they did those experiments. And I'm happy to say that many of them went on to be in STEM, right? And so and I see international curricula in schools using this methodology to teach science. It's not today. We can't teach science the way it was taught 15 years ago because there's an explosion in knowledge. So you can't know everything. The only thing you can know is a method to solve problems. And that magic of solving problems lies at the heart of STEM. So can we address that somewhere in our training so that people choose STEM, choose to be in STEM? So that's really my take on how to address some of these imbalances. Now, coming back to women in the workforce in STEM. So I looked at some numbers for the pharma industry. We have overall 11% women in the pharma industry, of which 17% are in R&D, 21% in corporate functions, and 12% in manufacturing, and 5% in sales and marketing. I thought these numbers were interesting. I wasn't so surprised that R&D had more. Typically, because of social sanction and social support for jobs that are seen to be more sort of R&D is not the same as manufacturing, for example. There is a certain social sanction for R&D, perhaps. We score poorly, 11% in pharma compared to 34% in the IT industry. That's the gap in women's participation in the pharmaceutical workforce. So if you look at the numbers of women who get degrees in biology or biological sciences, it's about 50% or so. So fewer women, and also I think that at entry level, probably we have a pretty good representation, and then the numbers drop off. And this can be for a variety of reasons. In my own experience, I've noticed that women in the workforce tend to drop off around the time when they have children, or they have, the peak child rearing years. And then the second drop off I'm seeing now, as I watch my peers, is when caregiving for parents and elderly comes into the picture. And so we have these two. We live in a certain social reality, right? So what do we need is, I think we need to support women much more. We need to understand what kinds of support they need and institutionally solve some of them. Why can't we have more on-site daycare? Why can't we think about how to enable elderly care in a manner that doesn't hold women back? How do we encourage women to really fight that battle, bite the bullet, keep going? This is one piece of advice I give women when they are really wrestling with this conflict between how can I be there for my children and how can I also fulfill my own aspirations. And I say that as your own aspirations are not second to everything else. There is a need to hang in there and keep pushing, because when you leave the workforce in your mid-30s or something like that, then you come back 5, 6, 7 years later, it's very, very difficult. I mean, re-entry is still hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's hard. So how can we give support to women at this stage? And I think mentorship is key. You know, I look back and think about the women whom I see, whom I reached out to, who inspired me, who told me that it is possible. And in turn, I do the same for other women, and they say, "Really, you did it?" I say, "Yeah, my children turned out pretty well," and you know, they really are proud of the fact that I stayed in the workforce and that I have a full professional life. So it is possible. So the need for role models and mentorship, I would say that that is very, very, very important. All of us play a role in that, not just women role models, but male role models as well, who support and can feel real empathy and real understanding for that period in one's life. Now, the other major piece that I like to talk about is that, you know, ultimately we need to see more women in senior leadership roles. And I know that can't just happen, you can't just inject it. But, you know, there are things which even the government has done, right? They are saying that independent directors on boards, you need a certain percentage of women. It actually forces companies to look for women who have the right skill set and qualifications. This is not the same as reservation. It means that there is more effort needed into searching and finding those people, right? But it should become part of institutional policy. It should become much more natural when it comes to searching to fill positions. So senior leadership roles are very important, because when there are women in those places, then somehow it affects the workforce to become more participatory for other women. So besides this, I think that we have to address gaps in wage gaps. We know this is a reality. There are wage gaps in the workplace, and they should not exist. It's unfair. We have to create level playing fields. For example, in academia, women in the US, for example, women get a little bit extra time for tenure. And, you know, we need to look at those kinds of models in the workplace as well. So these are some of my my thoughts based on experience.
Thanks so much, Radha.
If you go downstream, right, near your customers, obviously customers 50-50 roughly. Maybe it's a little bit more imbalanced. You go backwards, the provider space. I don't think if you walk into any hospital, you'll see the single biggest demographic there to be women, right? So it's in our area, it's closer to 55 to 60%, depending on where you go. Now, people may say that's because of nurses, but that's not fully true. If you take out nurses and you take out people at the ward level, you will still find that the top people in many fields, the doctors, right? There is a pretty good mix because it's meritocracy oriented. So I think that's insight basic number one, and it's nothing none of us don't know. It's that if you judge on meritocracy, you'll get the best talent to the top, right? The challenge is it's not judged on meritocracy. I loved Radha's analogy about kids and senior parents, and that's absolutely true. So the real question is who pushes people to take that decision? In the first time, the key influencer is typically self. And second, it's probably either the husband or the parents, right? In the second iteration, when it comes to senior parents, it's the in-laws and people around. We've lost significant talent during COVID because some of our team members basically had to take time off to go and look after. And in some cases, it was the higher job earning person who happens to be female. And it doesn't make any sense, right? Because if you just look at it logically, you'd say that this person's a lead career. Why don't you allow the lead career to do it? And yet the in-laws came in and had 2.5 cents of misconception is the way I look at it. So part of it is, I think, an education campaign, similar like we did a couple of decades ago about a happy family equals 4. I think some of that top-down does help. For me, look, diversity is a very complex subject because it's, in some ways, it makes the world a bit more complex. In some ways, it definitely makes the world a lot more beautiful. Now, it's not just diversity in terms of gender. Clearly, it's race, functional background. It's in terms of age and just perspectives. And I think the challenge that I see in places like the IOD is that we are all going to the same ladies and asking them to join the same boards. And I don't think that's solving too much. That's great. So I come back and say meritocracy. I think clearly flexi careers will make a big difference. But I think what Radha said is on the dot, which is role models at the end of the day, male, female, it doesn't matter. You just got to look up. Now, the role model has to have good behavior. You can't follow somebody who I guess is the equivalent of...
I think it's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So I think, yeah.
That's my perspective.
Absolutely. And thanks so much, Sam and Radha on this. And I think you're bang on with it. And I also really liked what you mentioned about, inspiring high school students right from the education system of how science is taught. And with, I think all of us, academia and industry, have to come together to support, this diversity beyond the social pressures people may face. So thanks so much. And with that, I think we move on to our last segment. And in the interest of time, Bhuvana, so let's, if you can take up on it. So,
thank you. Just adding one comment on what we discussed, the DEI, the so-called where we want to bring diversity and inclusivity is being talked about now well. And there's a lot of awareness that is getting created across organizations and men as allies, because earlier when we do Women's Day, it's all women-oriented program. Today, I think there's a lot of participation from men as allies. So I think a lot of organizations and the change is coming, but we have to sustain that change and make it happen. And going to society, I think all that what we discussed is towards the impact to society. Whatever we have discussed so far, it doesn't have a positive impact to society. I think this is not going to be useful. So whatever we do, how is it impacting the patients at large? And how we are making access to everything that we speak now, whether it be AI, medicines, or whatever it is, to the mass and across all geographies within India. I would like Sam to talk on this topic a bit from a hospital perspective and also the private versus public equity in terms of how do we able to address patients for their need, and then how do we get cost-effective medicines to all people, right? Like I think we talked about it in the beginning. Let us just see how it is going to be impactful in the coming years. Over to Sam.
I think clearly the need is there. I don't think you have to look too far, whether it's around pandemics, whether it's just regular healthcare. Need is huge. You go and look at most developed countries and you look at the top 10 growing professions. And guess what? All of them are in healthcare, or at least a vast majority of them tend to be in health or aged care of some form. In fact, the number one single profession across countries is home healthcare aid. And in the top 5, you'll have nursing. So the opportunity to make a difference is super huge. I think in terms of equity, look, this is a stratified reality. People go to different systems to get different levels of care. You don't go into a 7-star hotel and ask for your simple filter coffee to go on the go, right? Where do you go for that? You probably go to your local guy, or you'd go to a Starbucks or Starbucks equivalent in India. We call it CCD, or a barista or a Chai Kings or somebody like that. And we'll go and get a cup of tea. So it's a stratified reality. I think when you start trying to standardize the wrong unit, you will end up with the wrong outcome. So I think public versus private is a really simple answer. I think, and I have to give hats off to the current government. They've actually put healthcare on the map. They have been doing it pre-pandemic and they've continued to do it. So I think finally we're putting a lot more money where our mouth is, but still not enough. And that's the reality. So for India, which is a problem like no other in the world, there's no playbook you can copy. You cannot take money from the rich and give it to the poor, because the rich, the number of taxpayers that are out there are already in their minority. And I suspect 5 of them are on this call, and the rest are probably going to be subsidizing at least 50 of your fellow country people, if not 100 plus. And that's the reality. So I think you've got to think of a very different model to solve problems. If you can keep people out of hospitals, and this is a hospital person telling you this, that is step 1. right? Prevention is better than care, but for prevention to truly happen, ownership matters. You've got to take ownership of your own damn health. And the problem with most people, especially privileged and middle income, is we don't take ownership, right? The guy who gets lots of Diwali sweets is the most likely to misbehave. Guy or lady. The lady who is there, who is basically trying to feed everybody the Diwali sweets, is also going to eat a few, right? So if you start moving to healthier options, there's a higher likelihood we'll prevent. Now, obviously, data-informed decisions will help us a lot. If we know we're genetically inclined to certain issues, we can start preparing for it. I know, for example, my parents, one of them is a diabetic and one of them is a borderline. I know one has heart conditions. So those are two things I look out for. I have cut back because I take it a lot more seriously. I have to do exercise and I can't stand exercise, right? But at least that pragmatism has to come through. I think so. If a common person can take ownership, that will help. But I think beyond that, it's about efficiency in the value chain. So if we can harness the right people solving the right problem, and I think actually the government has done a lot of good work around this. We have a lot of teaching hospitals. And I think you talked a little bit about Simple Dot. So we've just tied up with one of the institutes of IIT to kind of look at how do we make our own value chain more efficient? How do we keep patients out of certain diseases that escalate into tertiary care? And I think if we can do that more frequently, we will win half the fight. It doesn't win all the fight, but at least that's part of the way to solve some of the problem. And I don't think it will ever be fully equitable, because the challenge with equity is that every person should pay their own share of tax. Why are people complaining and saying things about VAT or GST, right? The harsh reality is very few people subsidize the vast many. Now, that has its own problems. And if you look at the UK, when it voted for Brexit, who voted for Brexit? More senior people who were scared about losing their jobs versus the youngsters who really didn't want to leave Europe, who wanted more unity and the likes. So if you look at equity, it is already a probably not fair structure because it's who you ask. But I think step one is, if we take ownership of our own health, that will help us keep out of healthcare. Number two, go to the right place. Today, people should go to an accredited hospital institute. That way, you know what quality of care, standardized high quality care is more likely to happen rather than, let's say, quack care in a lot of places, or even non-standardized care. And I think the third is start asking tough questions around clinical outcomes. We do that to an extent in pharma, right? We hold the pharma industry to very high standards in terms of what drugs they can provide on the table. They have to be standardized. They have to be efficacious to 95% confidence interval. In fact, it's 99.99, right? Yeah. Why aren't we holding the same thing accountable to more bodies? And I think if we can do that, if we can start asking about our own clinical outcomes, there is a higher probability of us going to the right hospital for the right care. I'm sure if I ask the 5 people on the panel here, which is the top hospital for issue X, the educated 1 or 2 may be able to give you an answer, right? For a lot, it's probably a CMC Vellore. For eye care, it's an Arvind Eye Hospital in LV Prasad. It's Shankar Netralaya. It is not the corporate chains, except in few things. That, I think, is education that needs to be given.
Absolutely, Sam. And I think there's one question, Bhuvaneswari, that got posted.
Yeah. So I saw that it's between urban and rural ability to get the common medication, right? Like how it is differentiating the urban and the rural. And also hearing from both Varun and Malathi earlier, like the cost of medicine, we have addressed a lot around how can we bring down the cost. So if we can just talk about something on the urban and the rural part of India, how it is provided, that would be helpful.
Yeah, actually, can I take that
please.
question because it directly, ties into the work that I currently do at a company called HealthCube, where we have developed point of care diagnostics, multi-parametric systems that are highly portable, digitally enabled, and we screen people in rural, remote areas, urban poor communities where people don't have access to diagnostics. So, of course, as Sam says, if we can keep people out of the hospitals, then the cost of healthcare would go down. And the problem with that is, yes, lack of ownership, but that's the privilege of maybe a small segment of the population that has access to information, to testing, to doctors, to clinicians. But the reality in India is that we have millions and millions of people out there who not even had a single blood pressure measurement made in 35, 40, 45 years of their life. They have never been tested for their random blood glucose levels, let alone a fasting. They don't show up at a healthcare facility until there is a crisis. And that's not just because they don't take ownership, but because they don't have access to the testing facilities. And although the government says that every primary healthcare center should have XYZ ABC, by its own admission, the CAG's report says that the PHCs are woefully inadequate in our country. And if we wait for infrastructure to build up to a point where these become fully functional PHCs, and if we really follow this current paradigm of delivering healthcare, it's either going to be phenomenally expensive, which means it won't get done, or it will be done poorly. So we need to rethink this whole this healthcare delivery system in a and do a different, take a different approach. For example, in rural communities where you're not going to be able to find a great, multi-care facility, etc. Can we move the emphasis to proactive testing, to proactive, for example, our point of care devices, we have done 2.5 million tests in the last 3 years. A majority of the people that we test are for basic health parameters such as blood pressure, blood glucose, hemoglobin, total cholesterol. They've never had a single one of these tests done before. Once you introduce some algorithms into this whole process and say, okay, you've done some risk stratification and these are the tests that you actually need to do, you can start to uncover a lot of different things. And people who need the care, the other gap is that, okay, now you've done all this testing, you find people who need care, then what? So the government runs this amazing telemedicine portal called eSanjeevani. And during COVID, it saw a phenomenal spike in usage. And what we need to really do now to bridge this inequity in access to care is to enable people to use eSanjeevani-like platforms. And in fact, the HealthCube is fully integrated with eSanjeevani. So you can get a test done in a community center, immediately connect via eSanjeevani to a doctor and get healthcare advice, including a prescription, no matter, regardless of where the person is. This is the kind of technology bridging that needs to happen to address the whole issue of lack of equity in access. And then comes the whole issue of how do you, medicine, affordability of, hospital care, all of these things really have to go back to how the government handles healthcare, because private practitioners, private hospitals, and so on and so forth, really, they can't bear all of the burden of affordable care. It has to be at a much broader level, driven by policy and driven by real budgets. Yes, we do have successful models like Arvind Eye Hospital and LV Prasad, where you've got segment A, B, and C, and segment A, essentially subsidizes segment C population and B just pays at cost. And these models have worked very well, but we've not been able to replicate them across all types of specialities within medicine, right? We've done it in a very restricted manner for very specific types of care. And yeah, CMC well, but for decades they were funded by grants, and then finally they have the A, B, and C model as well. But what I'm saying is that overall, to really bridge gap, we need to use technology more intelligently, and then we really need allocations of budgets for those who cannot afford to really, not fall into serious debt and be able to get the care they need.
Thanks for sharing that. Possibly, Varun.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if I may add to that, right, I think brilliantly put. I see two broad areas there, right, to kind of bridge the gap and get equity. One, we spoke about even diagnosis, right? One is access to diagnostics. Two becomes access to medicines itself, right? So those would be the two broad categories. I completely agree with Dr. Radha in terms of how technology can actually help us penetrate even the rural area, get even awareness of certain diseases. But I think there's one more sector where which has an underlying philosophy called innovation, right? For example, LV Prasad, we spoke about LV Prasad. This is a vision measuring device that all of us go get our eyes tested, so on and so forth, right? But what LV Prasad actually found out is it is very difficult for people to even measure their vision on a regular basis, right? So they came up with a device that can actually be carried in the pocket. And there are doctors going to rural areas, going to places where they're deprived of even measuring their eyesight today, right? And trying measuring, and then they bring back to the care center and then kind of deliver the required medication, right? So one technology for sure, but there is this other smaller area where this non-technology innovation-based solutions would still be very critical, right? And the second one that we also saw in terms of how delivery of medicine happens, right? We saw very good examples through our COVID today. We are seeing great examples in Africa today in terms of how medicines are being delivered through drones and other technologies, right? I think both are very critical with the support of government and other corporate that India has. I think that is our strength. People is our strength. Scalability is our strength. Democratization is our strength. I think we'll have to focus on that to address both these problems.
Yeah, thanks. I think it was very insightful conversations, and I just calling Srividya to have some remarks around all the discussion that we had so far. Srividya.
Yeah, so thanks so much, everyone. I think we had some wonderful insights, and thanks for sharing your experience, on the various fronts. I'd like to just quickly summarize. I think, a lot of emphasis I heard on a collaboration-led innovation ecosystem, right, between industry and academia, and all of this literally joining hands, and just, to accelerate our R&D. And just a quick statistic, right? Today, we are the third largest manufacturer of drugs in terms of volume, as a country, but we rank 14th in terms of value. So this is the gap that we have literally between volume and value, which can literally be bridged only through R&D, right? And collaboration is going to be the essence of that. And for us to get into a leadership, I think harnessing and leveraging data science, AI across the spectrum is something that's going to be really critical for us. We also need to strengthen our manufacturing base and our supply base, right? With advanced manufacturing technologies, build efficient logistics, right? And supply chain. And of course, always a focus on quality and compliance, right? Moving on to talent, I think very nice insights, both in terms of education, as well as incentives, right? Really bridging the gap to make a technical career, attractive and lucrative, which will, attract the best talent to stay in STEM, right? And create a very supportive ecosystem for women to pursue their careers in STEM. And, last but not least, a critical need for the day is really to make healthcare accessible to everyone. And I have to say that with our, vaccination drive, which has been really, really impressive, we do have the capability. We just had to do the right things to make it happen and integrate and reach out to everyone. And one of the keys for this is boosting self-care and prevention, right? By strengthening our primary care and access to diagnostics. So with that, I would like to thank you all. And for those who are further interested in this topic, I'd also like to share that there's a very nice report by Ernst & Young, dated February 2021 on Indian Pharma, right? The future is now. So, feel free to, refer to that for, much more details on where we are as a country in the space. So thank you so much, everyone. It was truly a delight to have you all with us. And we look forward to meeting again in such a forum. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
There's Shamala who's coming on board too.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Radha Rangarajan, Mr. Varun, and Mr. Sam. And Shrivi, Bhuvana, thank you so much for joining this panel. It really means a lot to us and bringing this really, like Shrivi said, a string of conversations across so many topics with not just questions, but answers for everything. And I must thank IITMAA staff and the association for making this such a big success. And thanks to all the wonderful alumni and audience who joined from across the globe and making this possible. Like I said, this is just the beginning of the journey. Would look forward to joining us through this journey of Sangam over the next 3 months. Thanks, everybody. So just before we end, I would like to just invite Shanti. We just have a small announcement to make regarding our Sangam program.
Thanks, Shamala, and thanks to all the panelists. It was really a very interesting session. So as we've seen from this session and the introduction that Shamala gave, this year's theme for Sangam is all about restoring balance. And one idea that kept coming up even in the session today was about diversity. So we are also imbibing that spirit in all the activities that we are bringing to you as part of Sangam. So we have a diverse set of activities planned. Some will be panel discussions like this, fireside chats, but we have some other activities. So I want to announce 2 of them at the moment. One is we're going to have a quiz for school children from 7th to 12th standard. The quiz is going to be held on 8th of January. It's a Saturday. And it's for 7th standard kids to 12th standard kids. All the details are going to be available on the IITMAA website. So please do take that information and share it with people you know, so that we get a lot of kids to participate. And the theme, of course, is connected to restoring balance. And we have a well-known quiz master, Bertie Ashley, who's going to be organizing that quiz for us. We have one more event that's opening up today, and surprise, surprise, the theme is restoring balance. It's going to be a crossword, and I know for a lot of alumni of IIT, at least, that crossword is something we all learned to do in IITs. So I hope that this is a good nostalgia event. And that information will also be available online. The crossword will open today. You should be able to access it as soon as this event is open, and it will be available up till January 8th. So you have 3 weeks in which to partake in that. So these are the 2 events that I'm announcing right now, and we'll keep coming back to you with more. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.